What do you say?
Double play.
Right? He takes too much glee in that.
Predicted it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending 2021 Basketball Media Day. We'll have Coach Gard here and then head coach Marissa Mosley following this. We'll take some opening remarks from Coach and then take questions. We have microphones on either side. So as in years past, if you can just raise your hand and we'll call on media and get to as many questions as we can. So, Coach, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. Obviously, we're short into practice in terms of the number of days. I think we have 8 in. Today will be number 9. I really like what I've seen from this group all the way back to the spring in terms of how they approached. You can hear them in the weight room next door. They started there last April, and then how it played into the summer with having them here for 8 weeks and then it carried into the fall. So obviously a lot of new faces, but I think they've integrated themselves really well. A couple of the transfers that have had some playing experience have helped add maturity and experience to our locker room, and it's a group that attacks every day and has gotten better, I think, through the 8 days. So we obviously know it's a work in progress, and every day is a new day. They're learning constantly something new. But it's been a fun group to work with, and I'm looking forward to how we continue to move forward. Questions?
Start here, Jesse.
Greg, you've talked before about being patient with Lauren, and obviously there are things bigger than basketball, but from what you've seen early in practice, what kind of progress has he made, and can you share what type of player he is from a basketball standpoint?
Yeah, I think, Jesse, the biggest progress I saw, June and July and that first week in August were just about him being back in some sense of normalcy. And obviously we were all back with not having to go through what we walked through last year. But when he came back, then they went home in the end of first week in August. When he came back in September, a definite transformation in him physically. And I knew, obviously, what he has gone through and the time off was going to impact him physically in a negative way. But how he transformed his body in that month away from here, changed his diet, really attacked the workout regimen that he put together, and looked totally different when he came back. And really I'd say the last week, 10 days, or, we've been going 8 days. Within the last week, I would say, really I've started to see more of the Lauren Bowman that we recruited, 2-3 years ago. I think confidence is going up. Obviously physically looks much better, is able to do more things. So he's playing more like what we saw when he was in high school and AAU. And I think that's starting to grow. Obviously he's still a freshman and there's learning to be done, but in a much better place than where he was in June and July. So just hope he keeps moving forward. And the biggest thing for me with him is just making sure he's happy and healthy and in a good place. And I keep talking to him about it's a marathon, not a sprint, and let's just take it one day at a time. And I really like the progress he's made, but priority number one is that he's healthy and happy.
Jocko.
Coach, with how young this team is, how nice is it to have a guy like Brad Davison back to lead this team?
Yeah, I mean, I've said it many times. He's one of the best leaders I've ever been around in 30 years of coaching. So it's good for him to I think, be able to mentor some younger guys, and not only from a leadership standpoint, but how he's able to help Tyler and Johnny with their leadership skills. And I think the other two that have helped just because of the experience factor and what they've seen in their careers are Chris Vogt and Jacoby Neath. And it adds some more, like I mentioned earlier in the outset, the experience to the locker room, some maturity. So that's, Brad's done a really good job of kind of, I don't want to say backing off the leadership role, but helping Johnny and helping Tyler kind of find their voice.
Abby?
Hey, Greg. So one of your freshmen, Marcus Ilver, has been hyped up a lot. I'm curious if you can touch on some of his transition from European to American basketball, because there are quite a few differences. And what have you seen in him that you've really liked so far in practice?
Well, I think the differences have been to his advantage. in terms of what he has experienced overseas, playing in his country and what he's done with the national team over there. But he also spent 2 years in the States, at 2 different prep schools. So he is, accustomed to American basketball, if there is such a thing. I don't think there's really a whole lot of difference. In fact, we're probably the trend is, Europe usually has some of the new waves of the game before it hits the States. So with him, I think the unique thing is we recruited him off of Zoom and never got a chance to meet him or have him visit or watch him play in person live until he got here in mid-June. And he was bigger in real life than what he looked on film and stronger. And I think realistically is better than what we thought at this point in time. Now, obviously, he's adjusting to specifically the defensive end and the rebounding. Not that he can't play physical, but it's an acclimation process for everybody when they come to college. So, skilled, really passes it well, high IQ, has a little mean streak to him too. He has a little bit of, and I've noticed that with Eastern European players that they have a little edge to him, and he does. Nice kid off the court, but he knows how to compete, and he likes to compete. So, like I said, there'll be a lot of places for him to grow, but we're very happy with where he's at right now.
Let's go Steve up front, and then we'll go in the back.
I'm just wondering, I know the team's turned over quite a bit since last year, but after everything that happened last season, what came out last summer, how has that changed you, if at all, as a coach and interaction with players? And I didn't know if having a younger roster this year, if that plays into it at all as well.
Right. I think anytime you're always changing, Steve. I think that I've looked at that every year, every day, to be honest with you. How can I improve and get better and help our young men? And I think coming out of COVID, everything that is new, that is different, is viewed as a drastic change when maybe it was in the planning stages anyway, and COVID kind of put the brakes on it. So I think you're always looking to improve and always looking to change and change for the better and help, and whether it's schematically, whether it's within your program, always that you're always trying to find ways to continue to. Some things stay the same. Some things have been, the test of time has proven them to be the best way to continue to go forward, and then obviously you adapt and adjust as the times require.
Hey, Coach, with a group that is so young, how do you go about quickly getting them up to that standard of Wisconsin basketball before the season starts?
Well, one starts with education. We had our little media training last week, and Patrick had to introduce who Herb Kohl was. Some guys didn't know why it was called the Kohl Center, or why do we practice in the Nicholas Johnson Pavilion. Who's Nicholas Johnson? And it's really not Nicholas Johnson. We had to tell them who Ab was and Nancy, and just educate some of the younger guys on just that. So we talk about the simplest of things, but then you just take it one day at a time. You're continuing to teach, continue to help. It's been good to have some of those guys that have been through it. Tyler, Brad, Johnny, all the guys that are sophomores that have been through the drills. They can help the younger guys, but you're really taking it one practice, one day at a time. And we haven't had a chance to watch film yet. We will from Saturday. We scrimmaged a little bit Saturday, so we'll have some of that to show and kind of give them a view of themselves on the floor. So you're constantly teaching. I think that's the exciting part about this, is that there's so many unknowns that makes it exciting. I don't know what I'm going to see today at 4:15 when we start practice. So, but I've liked what we've seen so far through eight days.
Jeff.
Greg, over the years, you guys have had young point guards come in who were accustomed to running the point. A guy like Trice had to develop into one. What are your expectations for Chucky this year? Do you expect him to go through the standard growing of a freshman, or what kind of player do you think he'll be?
Yeah, I think Chucky brings a vision and a feel as a point guard to the team or to the floor that we've had a few guys around here in the 20 years I've been here that have that same type of natural feel. And I think that's one thing that jumps out about Chucky, is that he's a natural at it. He's very instinctive. He's really good with the ball. He's got great vision. He's really good in ball screens. He just knows how to play and understands how to play the position. And as I mentioned earlier when Jesse asked about Lauren, I mean, you see some of that in him too, albeit different. But both guys that I think are natural in that position and very comfortable with the ball in their hands and very comfortable seeing the floor. And it's that's, as a coach, that's always a good thing to have. There's going to be growing pains with both of them, and they're going to get some experience here, and we'll continue to help them grow through it. But Chucky's done some really good things. I'm cautious to temper it a little bit, just because he's a freshman, and there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be some things that he hasn't experienced yet, just that he's already finding out. There's things he can get away with or could get away with in high school that he can't in college, and you have to learn that, and usually experience is the best teacher.
Jim.
Greg, I'm guessing you don't want to give away scheme secrets, but as different as you guys are from a personnel standpoint this season, is it safe to say you'll look much different offensively? You've always been kind of the type to mold around what you have. Is that fair to say that'll happen again?
Yeah, I think you look at what the strengths of a group are, and this group has some certain strengths that maybe show out a little bit more than others. But I think also you look at what has been good to us and what we need to compete at a high level and compete at the upper echelon of this league. So you're trying to find that blend of both, of what we know is tried and true, and we know the ball's got to get in the paint. We know we got to try to get to the free throw line. We know we got to be really good defensively, specifically in transition and on the glass. And we spent a lot of time in those areas so far. But this group has the potential to do some things because of their skill sets that maybe are a little different than what we've done in the past.
Let's go Steve and then Abby.
Just wondering, with the transfers you ended up getting, were there specific positions, areas where you felt you needed to target in terms of the transfer market? How did you ending up with the few you did?
Yeah, I mean, Isaac Lindsay was, a ball kid for us, a ball boy for us. He was a little Badger. He's been at every camp we had. I went to college with his parents, so that one was pretty easy in terms of when they called and he wanted to come back home. And so that one I knew and didn't have to think long about. But with Jacoby and Chris, obviously, much like Marcus, we'd never met them. We had never seen them play live. They couldn't come to visit. I met them for the first time on June 15th when they showed up on campus. So guard play was one area we wanted to add some depth to, and obviously Jacoby and everything with him, and with talking to the coaches that he had played for, Danny Manning and Steve Forbes, and then his people back in Toronto, Zoom calls with his parents, that he checked a lot of those boxes. And then the same thing with Chris Vogt. We wanted to add some experience specifically up front to be able to help our younger guys in the locker room, in the practices, those type of things. So, and Chris has been a part of success. They won the Horizon League twice at Northern Kentucky, and then he went with John Brandon to Cincinnati, and they won his junior year. And then obviously COVID struck, and it was a little more difficult year last year at Cincinnati. But he's added what we've hoped he would add, and I think both are, first of all, really good people, and that's obviously when you're only on Zoom, you never know. But they both have been really good, and quite frankly, if much like Marcus, have been better in person than what we thought on film from evaluating them.
Abby.
Going back to Chucky, on Friday at Media Days in Indy, both you and Brad Davison mentioned his ability to be so focused defensively. Can you elaborate on what he's specifically doing that makes you think, yes, he has a defensive brain?
Well, he loves to pick up full court and harass the ball handler. That's a little bit of a double-edged sword from a standpoint of how can we be best holistically as a defensive unit, and we have to have ball pressure. But I've also had to talk to him a little bit about what college will be like in terms of getting fouls called. As a freshman, the officials won't know who he is, so he's going to have to earn that respect. So we're going to have to straddle that line of how aggressive he can be, and he can't, be as handsy maybe as what he was in the past or what he was able to get away with, because he was well known in Nebraska. He was a player of the year, so he he had earned that respect. So now as a college freshman, you start all over with that. And then how does your individual ability impact the rest of our team? And he can pressure. He can put he's really strong, plays low to the ground, pretty shifty. But we'll have to continue to help him make sure he doesn't put himself in disadvantaged situations, and specifically with picking up unnecessary fouls.
Jeff.
Greg, early last season, it looked like Ben Carlson was going to be a guy who could find some playing time for you, and then suffered the injury. What are your expectations for him, given his talent, but also the fact that he didn't play a lot of basketball last season?
Yeah, I think much like Steven Crowell, guys that are knowing they both know now's their time to step center stage, so to speak. So a little bit different path for both of them. I thought Ben needed to add and still needs to add lower body strength, and part of it's how he plays positionally in terms of playing in a more athletic, powerful stance. Steven, even though his base was pretty good, upper body's where he needed to add some of the bulk, and both have focus on those individual areas. But Ben is somebody that gets to the glass really quick. I think he can really be a really good rebounder. It's a matter of that mindset of going all the time and playing with that mindset. So stronger, healthier, obviously, and I think any experience, whether it's 5 minutes a game or 2 minutes a game, or he got his best educational experience, so to speak, from a basketball standpoint by going against the guys every day in practice when he was able to. Now, he obviously missed a big chunk. I think he came back, 2 or 3 weeks left in the season for the postseason. So, but he did some good things then, and he's had a good off season in terms of strength and gains, and now it's a matter of, much like all these younger guys, there's going to be some growing pains with it, but he's got to take advantage of the opportunities and grow his experience.
Last question for Coach Gard.
Coach, what have you seen from Johnny's game after he won the gold, and what are the next steps that you want to see from him this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that was noticeable when he came back from that was the confidence level and the swagger, so to speak. And I've talked about that before, and not that he wasn't a good player before he left, but just going to TCU, then making the team, and then obviously the experience they got in Latvia with the games. He came back and felt a sense of belonging, so to speak, that he was among the best in the country at that age level. And I think he's, strength is a good thing, a thing that he's added. He's added a little size to him. Tried to improve all facets of his game. Ball handling, he knows needs to continue to improve. Perimeter shooting, become even more consistent. But obviously his opportunities now are much larger and much greater with this team than what they were in the past. And that's he was in a difficult role last year when you're a true freshman and you're playing with a bunch of much older guys. It's hard to kind of find you're very cautious and to where do you tread and what's your spot and what's your role. So I think having that experience combined with what he did this summer sets him up to have a lot of opportunities coming up this year.
Coach, thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
We'll have Coach Mosley here shortly. As a reminder, following Coach's press conference, we'll have student athletes and assistant coaches and select women's basketball players available in the Nicholas Johnson. There will be chairs scattered around the arena, in the practice gym, that is, for one-on-one interviews. And then men's practice will be open